This is the second part of yesterday's shir, Ma'ases and Menachot. Kometz at המנחה. I mentioned yesterday that we're starting the second parak. It's the third parak, of course, which is also called Kometz המנחה. Both prokim are called Kometz המנחה, and that's why the first one is called Kometz, and the third parak is called Kometz Rabbo, the bigger one of the two prokim that both start with a Kometz, which is the subject of our shir today, to understand the Kometz. Yesterday we talked about the mincha. Today we're going to understand a little bit more about the idea of kmitza. Once again, all part of what was stimulated by my conversation with my brother and his questions about kmitzo, Rabbi David Lapin in Baltimore. So we had the psukim that we discussed yesterday, and it's in the second posuk in the second chapter of Vayikra that we introduced into kmitza. V'kamatz misham melo kumtzo. He should pinch from the flour a handful of flour. And we learned at the end of yesterday's shir, based on the Rashi in Menachos and Daf Yud Gimel, that the kometz is like the shechita. The kometz for menachos, the kmitza for the flour offering, is similar to the shechita of the animal offering, of the zevach, because both of them are separating what goes to the mizbeach from what the kohanim can eat. In the case of the zevach, the flesh remains behind, the blood goes to the mizbeach. In the case of the kmitza, the handful goes to the mizbeach, and what's left in the bowl, the kohen eat. And this idea of separating introduces us to the idea of the Maharal that I mentioned yesterday we were going to be learning today. And that is that in the word kmitza, there is negativity and there's positivity. I said to you yesterday that what immediately comes to mind is kamtza bar kamtza. Those were nice people. They were the cause of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. The idea of a kamtzan is a miser. The word kmitza doesn't have pleasant connotations to it, but similarly, aniyut, poverty, the ani, who is the person who brings the mincha, also has certain double connotations. On the one hand, an ani is often a kamtzan. An ani, by necessity, has to be somewhat miserly. He has to be very careful and very cautious with what he consumes and what he spends. On the other hand, the ani has a purity of heart, and a modesty, a humility, and a dependence on Hashem, which is so very important. So in aniyut there is positivity and negativity, and in kmitza there is positivity and negativity, and we'll look at that parallel idea today as we understand the Maharal. Says the Maharal, v'chasher tedakdek belashon kmitza. The Maharal is in Netzach Yisrael Perik Hey. If you look carefully at the word kamtzo, ki Hashem hazeh moreh al chiluk. Kamtzo, that word of kometz, implies chiluk, separation. Shekorei kamtza al shem hachiluk v'hapirud. Ki zehu lashon kmitza kamo v'kamatz misham. And the Maharal references our posuk in Vayikra and said, you see, so I started with the posuk saying, what does kmitzo mean? And then I thought of the Gemara of kamtza bar kamtza. And the Maharal is explaining the Gemara of kamtza bar kamtza and thinks of the posuk in Vayikra and says it's the same idea, it's the same word, and it means chiluk, it means separation, which we understand on the basis of the Rashi on Daf Yud Gimel. And he goes on to give various examples of them. And he says, and then he goes on to say that a chagav, a locust, is called kamtza in Onkelos. We appeared as locusts in their eyes, the Meraglim say about the Canaanim, and Onkelos says kekamtzin. They saw us as little misers. V'nikret hanamala kamtza. And you'll find that the ant is called a kamtza. So a locust is called a kamtza. An ant is called a kamtza. Ki hadavar shehu katan, kamo hanamala nikra kamtza. Because things that are small, he has a whole thesis in this parak, which is a beautiful parak to learn. He has a whole thesis that smallness creates multitudes. That unity, big people unite. Big people bring people together, bring things together. They find integration. And in integration there's unity, there's oneness. Small people separate and multiply. So the multitude, quantity, it's so beautiful because quantity is a function of smallness. Quality leads to bigness. and not the same kind of multitude. We're living in a world where everything is measured quantitatively. How many likes have you got? How many followers have you got? It's all about numbers. For numbers, you need smallness. When it comes to an integrating idea, that's not everybody. That brings people together, and you've got a oneness. To chagavim, the locusts, swarm. There's a swarming nature of that. That's multitudes. That's small. Ants are small. כי הדבר שהוא קטן כמו הנמלה נקרא קמצא, כי הקומץ הוא דבר מועט. Because just as the kometz is a very small quantity, how much flour do you pick up in your 3 fingers? It's a small quantity. ולקטנותם נקרא קמצא. And they're called kamsa, kometz, because it's small. That's what kamatz misham melokum tzor means. Take as much as you can in a tiny handful. That's the duplicity of the words that we talked about a few days ago in the shir, that there are 2 psukim. And there's a handful element and there's a small handful element. The kamatz misham melokum tzor. You should take from it the smallest amount you can in a handful. And the smaller they are, the more machlokes there is. Because with smallness comes machlokes, comes pirud. With smallness comes multitude, quantity, and with quantity comes argument and sin'ah. ומפני כי אלו האנשים היו מחולקים בשנאת חינם, ראוי שיקרא שמם קמצא ובר קמצא. And they were nicknamed Kamsa and Bar Kamsa because of their smallness of outlook, their meanness, their miserliness, their separateness, the sinat chinam that was there. And he goes on to explain that in the first Beis HaMikdash, the maila, the quality of the Beis HaMikdash was the presence of the Shekhinah. And what broke that was the tumah of Averot. The contamination of transgression removed the Shekhinah from the first Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash didn't have the Shekhinah to the same extent as the first one had. So what was its maila? What gave Kedusha to the second Beis HaMikdash if it didn't have the presence of the Shekhinah? That was the Achdus, it was the unity of the people that did that. And when the unity of the people was broken, the reason d'atra of the Beis HaMikdash ceased to exist. So it's so interesting that the first Beis HaMikdash and the second, that on the one hand you can have greatness through Kedusha, on the other hand you can have greatness through Achdut. And they both are able to sustain a Beis HaMikdash. Different qualities of Beis HaMikdash, but they're both able to sustain the quality of a Beis HaMikdash. So we see that in this idea of Kmitzah, there's smallness, there's meanness, there's limitation. It's interesting to me also that when you look at the Zvicha, when you look at the animal offerings, they are outward, they are expansive. What do you do with the blood? You zorek, you throw it. We talked about reaching beyond your capability, reaching beyond your limitation. The most important avodah in Zvochim is rikas hadam, throwing the blood out, throwing it up, taking to the Mizbeach. What do we do with the mincha offering? Kmitza, we hold it tight. There's no throwing, there's no zrika, we hold it tight. This idea of the tightness of the mincha versus the expansiveness of the zevach is so interesting. And yet, on the other hand, the third posuk in Vayikra Perek Beis says, "Va'anoret ateret min hamincha la'aron u'levanav," and what's left over the kohanim eat in the korban mincha. And then the posuk adds an amazing few words that doesn't appear in any of the other korbanot. Kodesh Kodashim Mei Ishei Hashem, explains the Klei Yaakov. Kodesh Kodashim, this is holy of holies, more so than any of the other korbanot. The whole of Zvachim that we've just learned. And now we come to the miserable little mincha, the little flower offering. Kodesh Kodashim Mei Ishei Hashem, explains the Klei Yaakov, this mincha offering has more kedusha to it than the Zvachim, than these magnificent animal offerings that we've talked about before. And we had the Ibn Ezra yesterday and the Rashi talking about nefesh kitkrav. When it comes to the mincha, it's the soul, that it's the korban with soul. It's brought with soul. It's the soul of the person that's brought. The Rashi says because of the ani. Is it just because it's a poor person that it comes with the soul? The Ibn Ezra doesn't learn that way. It doesn't learn it's because of the poverty. It's the nature of soul that is giving in this case. Rav Hirsch talks about the process of the kemitzah, how precise it is. And I want to note here that there are 2 elements in the kemitzah. There is kamtzanut, there is miserliness, there is limitation, there is closed, holding it in your fist instead of throwing it out. There is that. But there's also precision. And that you put your hand in and then you've got to wipe it with your thumb and your little finger to make sure, he says, you get to a very precise amount. With the zvachim, it doesn't have to be so precise. You throw the blood and what's left over, you pour on the yesod. How much blood do you throw? It doesn't tell us, it doesn't matter. And what if there's nothing left over? So there's nothing left over. We had the Tosfos, I think, on Daf Chav Gimel talking about whether there has to be something left to throw over out or not, but how much doesn't matter. When it comes to the mincha, it has to be absolutely precise. Lo pachot v'lo yoter. Not too little, not too much. It's got to be exactly right. And we learn in our parak, we've learned that if there's a little stone there or there's salt that you pick up, which means you've got less flour than you're supposed to have, that's a problem. It's got to be precise. It's got to be exact. And so when you look at that midah of aniyut, when a person is poor, is it that he's miserly or is he precise? Does he spend only what he needs? Does he consume only what he needs with precision and there's no wastage? I was remembering as I was writing notes today, as I was writing in my learning today, and I was starting at the top of the page. I remember I had a teacher in elementary school who taught us to use the top line of the page, not to start on the next line. And she tells us, if you add up how many pages you save by using the top line over years at school, you'll save many, many notebooks as a result of that. Is that miserliness or is that precision? Are you using what you need, or are you being too miserliness? They go hand in hand. They're so close, and that's the middle of the oni. Don't let yourself become miserly. Rather be precise. And the Klei Yaakov goes through this beautiful Seder HaKorbanos. He goes through in Posuk Aleph, in Perik Beis, he goes through the order of the Korbanos, starting with Bakar, which is the rich man's korban. Then going to Tzon, to the lamb, to the sheep, which is a medium person's korban. And then he goes to the bird, which is the poor person's korban. And then the mincha, which is the very poor person's korban. And he talks about the difference in the wording in the psukim, that in the Bakar it says, "V'kirbo ch'ra'av yirchatz b'mayim," you've got to wash the inside out. But he says it's kirbo ch'ra'av, you're washing the korban, not the man. Whereas in the case of the lamb, it says, "V'hakere v'hakrayim yirchatz." You wash the inside, not its inside. For the rich man, it's inside, its inside, the korban's inside. But says the Klei Yaakov, the man remains filthy inside because he's a rich man and there's complacency and there's arrogance and there are all the things that are there. Just bringing a korban doesn't get rid of that. You wash the korban, but your own inside is still not so clean. Not so with the Beinoni. If one's an ordinary person, then you're washing the inside as well. In the case of the off, when it comes to the bird, then it says v'hisiret morata benotzata v'hishlichota. You take the inner parts out and you throw them away. You cast them aside. There's nothing left of it. You haven't. In the first case, you haven't washed it at all. In the second case, you've washed it. In the third place, you've cut it out and thrown it out. It's not there anymore. And then you come to the mincha kol nafsho makri. There's nothing to throw out. You bring everything of yourself to the Ribono Shel Olam. So in aniyut, there's a mido in aniyut, in poverty, which is for a rich person as well, because anav comes from ani. Ani doesn't just mean you don't have any money. Ani means you have the anava, you have the humility, the simplicity, the trust in Hashem of the ani. You live like the ani. I was just rereading the biography of the Reichmans in Canada, people who were among the richest people in the world, who lived like aniyim. Not in a miserly way, they were the biggest baalei tzedakah of our generation, but they lived simplicity. What does simplicity mean? It means you take only what you need. Lihistapek min hamu'at does not mean to be satisfied. I don't know where that word comes from. Listapek, to be satisfied with little. That's not what it means. Listapek comes from the word sapak, to draw your provisions. Lesapek is to provide. Listapek b'mu'at is to take what you need from small quantities. You need a certain amount of nutrition. Take it out of a small portion. Take a small portion, eat it slowly, enjoy it. Get all the nutrition you can out of it instead of big volumes. Experiences of life. Take small amounts and suck everything you can out of the experience so that you're nourished. You're fully nourished by small quantity. It's not that you're undernourished. There's a capacity to be nourished fully from small quantity. That's mistapek b'muat. And so what do you do with the rest if you're not a real ani? If you're a rich person who has the quality of anava, the quality of aniyut. So you live as the Reichmans lived, very, very wealthy people who live very simply, just according to the ordinary people in their part of the world, wherever it was in whatever part of the world they were living at the time. What do you do with the rest? You have all these millions and millions of dollars, but you're an ani, you're a poor person, you put it away. You give tzedakah with part of it, and you put it away. And so interestingly, our wonderful Ibn Ezra on the posuk, on the word v'kamatz, says migzerat likmatzim. The only other time you find the word kamatz in the Torah up until this point is in Bereshis, in Sefer Bereshis, vataz haaretz b'sheva shnei hasava. And what did Yosef do with the land of Egypt during the time of plenty? He made it likmatzim. That's where we have the word, says the Ibn Ezra. What does likmatzim mean? Says Unkelus there, avuro le'otzrim. They put it into storehouses. That's what an ani does. He takes what he needs and he stores the rest. He invests for the future, for future generations, invests in the community, invests in people's businesses, provides employment. That's what he does. And the success of the Western world has been built on this principle, that you take what you need, but you invest the rest. That's Warren Buffett's whole philosophy of life. Just take what you need. That's all you need to consume, because everything you're spending could have been invested. And look at the opportunity cost. When you spend $1, don't think of it as $1. Think of it as the future value of $1 invested over the next 50 years. That's what your ice cream cost you. Not $1, it cost you $50. And think of money that way. That he lives like an oni. Warren Buffett is another billionaire who lives like an oni, lives like a poor person. He has that humility, that modesty. And that's it. Avura la'otzrin. Invest it, put it away for the future. That's what Yosef taught Paro. And that's the basis of Western civilization, which comes from the Torah. Take what you need from small quantities. And that's the kemitzah. Be an oni, take a mincha. You just need flour, you need a slice of bread. We know the hostages, Baruch Hashem, lost a body, unfortunately, but at least the body was returned yesterday. What a celebration, what a relief. And those poor hostages, what did they live on for 2 years? A slice of pita? A little piece of bread? They were able to live on that. I'm not suggesting, Chas v'sholom, that that's all we eat, but eat small quantities, consume little. Invest lots. That's the idea of the oni. Invest in others. Invest in the future. Consume as little as one can, because that's only. Take a kemitzah. Don't be miserly. Be precise. Take your three. If you're taking a fistful, take the smallest fistful you can. If you use 2 fingers, that's a pinch. It's not a fistful. If you use your whole hand, that's taking more than you need. Use your 3 fingers. It's still called a fistful, but it's a small fistful. And you'll get everything you need from it, so much so that the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ma'ali ani alav, a person who lives on small quantity and enormous quality, a person who nourishes himself with a small amount so that he can nourish others with the rest. Ma'ali ani alav ki'ilu hikriv nafsho. I consider this little poor mincha offering as if he brought himself as a korban. He brought his soul.